Hey everybody, welcome back to this remix of one of the live streams I did where I pull out kind of my approach to Obsidian and how my crazy brain works. But let me know in the comments what you think about this. It's a new format, something I'm trying out. But without any further ado, welcome to the live stream outtake on my crazy use of Obsidian. I do want to talk a little bit about mind mapping versus what Obsidian and its graph do, but I want to show you just with my website, which is kind of nice when you host it in Obsidian, you can view your graph. If you look here, this is going to show the graph of the website, the entire graph. And the reason this is really cool is that Notebook LM has come out and said, oh, you don't need Obsidian anymore because you have a mind map. They're not the same thing. And I want to talk about why. A mind map is a high level brainstorming, iterating. I want to get topics down. I want to get buckets that are going to contain specific things. It's a non-linear way to outline. That's the best way I can explain it. It's the way that I've used for years since I learned about it in my adult ed program, and they called it cognitive mapping. Same thing, a mind map, cognitive map, same term. Obsidian really isn't that. They have their Canvas feature that kind of replicates that, and you can create workflows and nodes and do a lot of those things. What they don't have is what Obsidian does. Obsidian, and let me show you, we'll zoom in here. And I'm using my library initially as kind of the way of showing this. If I go here, I can see from a topic view, and I can see all of the different connections to different topics from that topic view, what the individual case studies are. Or, I mean, not case studies, the individual books, the individual resources are. So as my library, all of that is there. Then you will notice that there are some things that have other connection points. So if I zoom out and then I go here, you'll see that it goes to the author, and this shows you all of the books that are connected to authors and all of the books that he's written. All of this gets created manually. And if you go over here to my blog, you'll see the same thing, but then you'll see that it also goes into other places and can connect to other things. So if I mention a book title in a blog, then it's going to, and I drop a link to my authors or my topics page in my library, you're going to see that connection. So it's a real world way of tying in things in the moment. And that's why Obsidian is so cool. And that's why Obsidian is different. As I'm writing a note, as I'm creating a page, as I'm doing anything, I can tag something else. I can turn it into a relational database on the fly. At least right now, generative AI can't do that. It can see surface level correlation. It can see that, hey, these two sources are in the same bucket, so I need to say that there's a relationship there, but it can't get to that granular level and say, I am talking about adult learning theory and I want to talk about Malcolm Knowles, so I'm going to connect Malcolm Knowles, the author, and his book in this sentence and then have it connect back to that note all at the same time. Or I want to follow up with someone, or I want to create something new so I can create it as an empty placeholder, go back, click it, and fill in the details later. Again, it's all about not breaking flow. It's all about not getting yourself out of that headspace. And like I said, I'm doing a dedicated video on this, and I've done some others before, but I just wanted to cover that really quickly. And my website gives me a good way to kind of do that. The graph view, quite frankly, isn't as important as the what's really going on behind the scenes. The graph view is the visual representation of that. I've switched over, you'll see on the screen, to Obsidian itself. And you'll see that I've got all of my website here on the left expanded. And so that's the entire website. Remember that graph view we saw? Basically, if you look here in the bottom right corner, you're going to see that's the website. All of this red, all of these other connections are my work notes. So they're different ways of thinking about everything that you're doing. So, and if you watch Nick Milo, which I would highly suggest, linking your thinking, Nick Milo is phenomenal at explaining what Obsidian is and how it can be used in a very effective way. But he uses this idea of a map of contents. So you'll see right here, this says the Valpo map of contents. And all a map of contents is a way to use a note-based structure to replicate in some ways a folder. And then, but instead of files, it's notes. Those notes then become living, breathing things. And it's really cool. I mean, again, I'm a big fan of Nick's, and I think he does a great job. And so that's why this is really important. And you'll notice here that a lot of these notes are like here, these are live notes to other things within the directory, but then there are also external links. And all of this is done in Markdown. So it's a pretty cool process. I like it a lot. So when you pull something into Obsidian through the Supernote plugin, what you're going to get, and you have to customize these views. So I don't want you to think that there's no work involved to make this happen. But if you look here, you'll see that I have the text that came in with this particular note. Of course, there's going to be some duplication because the header, I do this just on the Supernote side, so I can delete that from here if I want. And then you're going to see the basic notes. I didn't have a lot in this particular one because, quite frankly, there were a lot of extra resources. But now what I can do is I can go back to those slides, I can pull in those resources, and I can round this out. So remember, my Supernote is my handwritten note taker. That's what its primary function is. I'm not doing things that I would use a computer for on the Supernote. But you'll notice that the text came in, it came in written as I wrote it. Most of it's pretty much there. But for example, this is about followership. And once I get this in here, and let me go back. This is how it actually comes in initially. So when it pops in, you get these options. You can attach your markdown, which is what I did that converted this text to something editable. You can attach the markdown and images if you prefer to work with images, or you can attach a PDF. I tend to do the markdown and the PDF. And then that way, what I can do is I pull in the PDF and have it down here as a reference. You don't have to do it that way. It's all up again to what you think is the best thing. Now, let's say that I want to make sure that we're talking about followership. If I want to add in a book here, so I'll go in, and this is where Markdown comes in, and I go the art of followership. Now, watch this graph over on the right. When I click this, we now have another dot that has been added as a connection. I'll probably go back in and change this up and do a few more things, but I can then add in, let's say I did that, and that takes me to all the authors of that book, which include Ira Chaloff. But let's go ahead and we will put Ira Chaloff. And when we do that, now you'll see yet another connection point pop up. And you just do that throughout. So as you are writing, as you are thinking, as you are going, you can do that. Now, the fact that these have colors means they're active and existing notes. You can add things and say you don't have a contact yet for somebody, but they were a presenter here, but you don't want to forget to give them a contact name, then you can go ahead and do these brackets, add the name, and it'll stay grayed out, or a lighter color of purple in this case. And until you go back and add it in, or add that information in, it will still show in the graph, but it'll show grayed out. This is a lot of what will be covered in the class as we get further into it. But I've also already done content on this, and Nick Milo's done a lot. Dan Berg has done content on this. Vlad Campos, if any of you have watched his videos, he does a lot on this. I find it very useful. And the primary reason for that is because a lot of my work is relationship driven. For me, when I was working with multiple schools and multiple campuses, I had to try to remember from moment to moment who was doing what on what campus. And I was paper-based at the time. So a lot of that was up here. And it was all in my head, as a matter of fact. I really had to work hard, and I was much younger then. I mean, this was years ago when I had this kind of ability to really be able to connect the dots. And as a conversation was happening, being able to say, oh, yeah, this person is doing that at Knox College. Oh, did you know that so and so at Grinnell College is doing this other cool thing? And even now within Valpo, professors working in engineering might be doing something really innovative that has implications in the humanities or vice versa. Or you might have someone doing something in the sciences that impacts health science. And then how do you get those people talking? How do you make those connections? What Obsidian does is it allows me to replicate that mental cognitive process I always had in a very straightforward way digitally. Then I can not rely on my brain to constantly dig through and sort that information. Instead, what I can do is I can search for a term, or I can look at my contents, or I can look at an individual and see how they're connected to all of these different things. Someone walks into my office and said, who's working on 3D printing? And I can look up who's involved in the makerspace, who runs the makerspace, what types of projects have I been told about that use the makerspace. All of that I can now, I don't want to say pawn off, but push off into Obsidian in a lot of ways so that I'm not having to keep those connections active continuously nonstop in my head. But the big thing to remember about Obsidian is it's an open source platform. So you pay nothing for it proper. I pay for sync because I haven't found a great way to do it otherwise. And I don't mind giving back to the Obsidian community. Some people do use sync thing, and they talk about that quite a bit as an alternative to paying Obsidian to use their sync feature. But Obsidian Sync just works. And it works on my mobile phone. It works on my computer at work. It works here on my local PC. All of your files are locally stored. And then basically all Sync does is move them from location to location and make sure that they stay local. So they don't maintain it's not really a cloud service. It's more about moving things around and making sure that it stays up to date no matter where you're working on it. Now, I take it a step further and I store my Obsidian Vault locally on OneDrive on my PC and on my phone. So that way, I kind of have a dual redundancy. I have them locally stored, but that local copy is also OneDrive. And that then allows me to have a lot of different ways to engage with it. Now, it won't work if you leave OneDrive Cloud Sync. You want to make sure you keep a local copy of those files. The beauty of Obsidian is that you're making all of these seemingly random connections to other things, but you can also start with a base, with a highly structured folder-driven base, and that's what I do. So you'll notice here, all of my blogs are by year, by month, a lot of different folders here. All of my images are in a folder. My library, if I open that up, I've got my authors, my topics, but then I have the actual notes, which is what you see on the front end. I am a big believer in redundancy and a big believer in being able to find things multiple ways. If tomorrow Obsidian was gone, all of my notes are still in folders. They're all there. So that means that even if Obsidian was gone and I had to go back to the old way of searching and finding and doing all of these things, I would be able to do that just by going through my file structure. So Obsidian adds another layer as far as making it a little bit more intuitive and easier to use and easier to add on the fly connections. But for the basic notes themselves, they still exist within files, within folders, because they're easy to find that way. Some people just use Obsidian and they just type and use notes that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no right or wrong way to do any of this. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that whatever the flow is that you're in is the right one for you. Hey, everybody. Hopefully that was fun. Like I said, a little bit different format. Thought it would be fun to do since I just did this live stream a while back. And sometimes you say something and you feel like you said it the best best way you could say it. And so I wanted to use that as kind of a catalyst to talk a little bit more about not just mind mapping, although that's included in this and the Obsidian graph, but also kind of the workflow and process and the file structure behind it. So you'll probably get and hear a lot of this if you sign up for the course, which you can find the link in the description. Otherwise, thank you so much for paying attention. Please subscribe, like the channel, like the content, drop your comments down below. Always interested to hear what you think, your feedback. Do you like this format? I mean, we're basically taking something that I did for about an hour and a half, and we're chopping it up into smaller pieces with a little bit of commentary. Anyway, let me know. Please, thank you again to all the patrons who support me, all the YouTube members and insiders, and also those on Patreon on both the supporter and the insider tiers, and everyone who's purchased the course already. So thankful for that support. And until next time, I will see you soon and keep on moving forward. Bye now.